Everyone keeps talking to me about machines coming to take our jobs, but you know what? I just don't see it. My job is so demanding, so technical, so difficult, there is no way the robots will come for me. Not a chance in hell. Oh. Well, it's time for On Mechanist. I, for one, welcome our new Jade Mech overlords. Ever since End of Dragons launched, we've been living in a world ruled by mechanists. We have two outstanding DPS builds, a phenomenal Alacrity DPS build, and today we're covering the absolutely incredible Heal Alacrity Mechanist. Here we have a build that has an absolutely trivial time keeping up 100% Alacrity, grants 25 might, and covers off on Regen, Fury, Vigor, and Protection. Not only that, you can also give your team stability and Aegis in a pinch. To top things off, you also have insane amounts of barrier and Condi cleanse to carry your team through even the sketchiest encounters. All these things come together to make this one of the premier healing builds for all of Guild Wars 2's endgame content. While some other healing builds need to pick and choose what kind of support they can give their team, Mechanist is a greedy little piglet and can do it all. Once you pick this up, you'll have a spot on essentially every encounter in the game. And with that, let's get cracking. Mechanist is one of the elite specializations for the Engineer, with the others being Scrapper and Hollowsmith. Once you equip the Mechanist trait line, you'll get access to Mace as a main hand weapon, which offers a good amount of condition damage and barrier application. You'll get access to a new set of signet skills to mess around with as well. We'll be using a few of these in today's build. You'll also replace your typical Engineer toolbelt skills with mech command skills. Oh yeah, you'll also get a new swanky AI controlled mech bot to follow you around and aid you in combat. Your trait choices in the Mechanist trait line will let you decide whether your mech is focused on power damage, condition damage, or applying boons. It will also change what mech control skills you have access to at any point. This makes Mechanist a very customizable and very fun trait line to play with. We'll quickly cover off on where your healing on Heal Mechanist actually comes from. Heal Alacrity Mechanist by default runs 3 kits, which gives you access to 5 additional skills each, so you'll be dipping in and out of them often for healing. Medkit is your default heal skill and gets buffed by the trait Health Insurance. Here you have access to Med Blaster, which will spray healing to allies in front of you, Bandage Blast, which will fire bandages ahead of you, heal allies and apply regeneration, Vital Burst, which will provide a single burst of healing around you. You also grant regeneration with Infusion Bomb, with a particularly long base duration of 10 seconds. The 5th skill in Elixir Gun, Super Elixir, will provide a burst of healing and then pulse additional healing for 5 seconds. The 5th skill in Mortar Kit, Elixir Shell, will lay down a water field which you can blast for additional healing, and it will also pulse healing for 5 seconds. You'll also heal allies whenever you use a mech command skill due to the trait Soothing Detonation. With the trait Medical Dispersion Field, when you're in combat, you'll store up 33% of the healing you apply to yourself, and every 3 seconds you'll use that to heal nearby allies. You have access to 2 water fields on Cleansing Field in Medkit and Elixir Shell, which you can blast for some extra healing. On top of all this healing, you also apply a ton of barrier on Mechanist, which you can think of as a kind of preemptive healing. Alacrity is the most important boon you'll be providing with Heal Mechanist, and is made possible by a single trait, Channeling Conduits in the Mechanist line. This trait causes you to apply Alacrity to a target when you also grant that target barrier, which you will apply through several traits and skills. For a quick rundown of how you apply barrier, your Mace autoattack chain will apply barrier to allies around you. The trait Barrier Engine causes your mech to apply barrier to nearby allies automatically every 3 seconds. Your mech command skill, Barrier Burst, will apply 5 pulses of barrier and Alacrity. When you activate Barrier Signet, you'll again apply 5 pulses of Alacrity. On top of applying Alacrity through barrier, you'll also grant Alacrity via your mech command skill, Crisis Zone. All these ways in which you provide Alacrity mean you'll have an absolutely trivial time upkeeping 100% Alacrity. Before we jump into the build proper, we have a balance patch coming up at the end of June, so let's touch on the changes to Mechanist and how they impact this build. Mechanical Genius currently causes your mech to inherit a percentage of your stats, with this being reduced if your mech is standing too far away from you. After this next patch, instead of your mech gaining less stats, your mech command skills will take longer to recharge when it's too far away from you. Just keep your mech close and you won't have to worry about this change either way. The trait Barrier Engine will be receiving a slight nerf in PVE to bring it in line with the PvP and World vs World versions, so expect to see slightly less barrier being applied to your group automatically by your mech. The skill Barrier Burst is having the base barrier that it applies significantly increased in PVE, and it's also going to scale much better with healing power, so look forward to this skill just being way better now. Now let's cover off on our weapons. Fortunately, the weapons on Heal Mech are fairly simple. You'll always want to run Mace and Shield. Mace is the new weapon that you get access to when you become a Mechanist. It outputs a ton of barrier, applies confusion, grants regeneration and vigor, and gives you access to more CC. Mace autoattack will deal some strike damage, inflict confusion, and on the last strike, grant barrier to nearby allies. This is one of the main ways you'll be providing Alacrity. Just auto-attacking with your Mace and having your mech attack a target is enough to upkeep 100% Alacrity on your team. Energizing Slam will inflict vulnerability and confusion on your target, as well as grant regeneration and vigor to allies. You'll be wanting to use the skill off cooldown to help upkeep these boons. Rocket Fist Prototype will deal some damage, apply burning, and most importantly for Heal Mechanist, stun nearby enemies. Try and save this skill for when you need some extra breakbar damage. Shield is an outstanding defensive weapon, and will make surviving and tanking much easier. It gives you access to a projectile reflect, channel block, and tons of CC. Your shield skills also grant protection to nearby allies thanks to your overshield trait. Magnetic Shield will create a shield that reflects projectiles for 3 seconds. It can then be released to knock back enemies. Static Shield will grant you a channeled block for 2.5 seconds and stun enemies that attack you while you're blocking. You can then throw your shield to daze enemies when you throw it, and once again when it returns. Now onto our skills, of which we have many. Before I cover off on the utility skills Heal Alac Mech uses, we'll have a quick chat about your mech command skills. These skills are determined by your trait choices in the Mechanist trait line, and are very important for how this build functions. Explosive Knuckle is unlocked when you equip the trait High Impact Drivers, and will simply deal some strike damage and apply weakness. This is your lowest priority in terms of mech command skills, and is only really here because of the might you get from High Impact Drivers is such high value. Crisis Zone is unlocked when you pick the trait Channeling Conduits, and is absolutely loaded. It will provide Aegis, stability, protection, alacrity, remove conditions, and break stuns on nearby allies. On Heal Mech, you're going to want to try and save this skill to provide stability and Aegis to avoid damaging mechanics whenever possible. If you don't need any of the baked in utility, feel free just to use it off cooldown to help upkeep Alacrity. Barrier Burst is unlocked when you select the trait Barrier Engine, and will pulse Barrier, Might, and Fury to nearby allies. This is amazing for upkeeping Alacrity, and can be used to help nullify sudden spikes of damage, like the exploding green circles on Veil Guardian. One of the key features of Engineer as a class is that they have access to kit skills. Here, you can activate the skill to temporarily swap your weapon skills to an entirely new set of skills, depending on what you need at any point. This makes Engineer incredibly flexible, as you can tailor your build to any encounter. We'll be making use of several of these kits on Heal Mechanist, as well as some signets, so buckle up. Medkit is by far and away your best heal skill choice, outside of a few very niche situations. Here you get access to 5 new healing skills, and your entire kit is buffed through the trait Health Insurance. This trait will increase your incoming healing effectiveness, and give you an extra 20% outgoing healing when using Medkit. Med Blaster will heal allies in front of you 3 times each time the skill is activated. It will also heal more for each boon on the ally. Bandage Blast will fire 5 bandages ahead of you, which will heal allies and grant regeneration. As a little side note, this skill also heals downed allies, which is a nifty little trick. Cleansing Field will cleanse conditions from allies around you and act as a water field, which we can blast for additional healing with Med 5 shortly. Remember, this skill is going to be a go-to skill for Conti Cleanse. Vital Burst will simply release a burst of healing to allies around you. Nice and simple. Infusion Bomb will explode after 1 second, act as a blast finisher, very handy given you can blast water fields for additional healing, and grant allies swiftness, vigor, and regeneration. You're going to want to press Infusion Bomb off cooldown to help maintain these important boons. It's also a good idea to use Cleansing Field beforehand to lay down a water field, which takes advantage of the blast finisher on Infusion Bomb. Elixir Gun will give you access to some soft CC, extra Conti Cleanse, and some very useful elixir skills to supplement our healing and might generation. Tranquilizer Dart will fire a shot that inflicts bleeding and weakness on your target, not hugely useful on this healing build. Glob Shot will fire a bouncing glob which cripples foes and grants swiftness to your allies. Fumigate will spray a cone of fumes which inflicts poison and vulnerability on foes. It also cures conditions on allies with every strike. Very useful if you need some emergency condition cleanse on allies, like on Slothazor. Acid Bomb will cause you to leap backwards for a surprisingly long distance, and leave a damaging AoE where you started. It's also a blast finisher, and when paired with the trait HGH, will grant you and your allies might. A super useful tip, you can cancel the leap backwards by weapon swapping. Very nice if you're about to send yourself off the edge of an arena, like I have done many times. Super Elixir will shoot an orb that heals allies on impact and will leave a pulsing AoE that also heals you and your allies. It will also remove a condition for good measure. Again, with the trait HGH, it will also grant some additional might. This is going to be one of your go-to skills to help keep up some sustained healing on your team. Shift Signet is an absolute staple on all Mechanist builds. It's absolutely insane just how much this skill offers you. The passive of the Signet increases your movement speed by 25% and copies any boons you gain straight to your mech. Granting your mech 25 might, fury, quickness, and alacrity is a significant DPS increase. When you activate Shift Signet, you and your mech shadow step to target location, which is super useful for positioning your mech, break stun, and remove 2 conditions. Barrier Signet is a fantastic choice on any Alacrity Mechanist build. The passive will reduce your incoming strike and condition damage by 10%, which is amazing if you need to tank. When you activate it, you'll create a projectile blocking dome that also grants barrier every second. If your mech is active, the barrier will be around your mech, else it will just be created around you. This is an amazing source of alacrity through the barrier you apply, as well as a form of damage mitigation. Elite Mortar Kit gives you a whole bunch of useful skills with a massive 1500 range. This will let you support your team and damage targets even if you or others need to leave the group to deal with mechanics. Mortar Shot will simply deal some strike damage at the target location and act as a projectile finisher. Poison Gas Shell will deal some damage and leave a poison field at the target location. Not hugely relevant for this build, but it's still nice to have. Endothermic Shell will leave an ice field at the target location and inflict chill on any foes in the target area. A very nice form of soft CC through the chilled condition. Flash Shell will blind enemies at the target location, which is incredible for shutting down groups of mobs and providing additional soft CC. Elixir Shell is the main reason you'll be taking Mortar Kit. Here, you'll place a water field at the target location, which will heal you and your allies for 5 seconds. You can blast this field for additional healing and is amazing for healing your team at range. Again, when paired with the trait HGH, Elixir Shell will also grant some might to your team. If you need to swap out a utility skill, swap out either Elixir Gun or Barrier Signet for extra utility as needed. For some other useful skills, Personal Battering Ram offers amazing break bar damage, Gear Kit can be used for an additional channel block on Gear Shield, and some extra CC from Magnet. Throw Mine can provide some emergency boon strip. While not often used, you can swap out Elite Mortar Kit for Overclock Signet. This will reduce the cooldown on your Shift Signet and Barrier Signet, which can be useful if, for whatever reason, you're having trouble upkeeping Alacrity on your team, or want to get more uses out of the barrier from Barrier Signet. Now it's time for our traits. Outside of the Mechanist trait line, which is obviously required here, our other trait choices are going to be focused on pumping our healing and support potential. The Inventions trait line offers some amazing sources of healing, as well as extra boon support. Cleansing Pulse will remove a condition from allies when you use a heal skill. Overshield will cause your shield skills to grant protection to nearby allies. Having a high uptime on protection is going to make keeping your squishy DPS players alive so much easier. Reconstruction Enclosure will grant some additional protection to allies whenever you use a heal skill. Again, more protection is always a good thing. Soothing Detonation will heal nearby allies for a decent amount whenever you use a tool belt skill. Given that your tool belt skills are replaced by mech command skills when you become a mechanist, this applies whenever you use your mech command skills instead. Energy Amplifier will simply increase your healing power when you have regeneration. You have multiple sources of regeneration with this build, so expect to see this active all the time. Medical Dispersion Field is a very interesting trait. During combat, you'll effectively bank all the healing you apply to yourself, and every 3 seconds, you'll spend 33% of this stockpiled healing to heal your nearby allies. This gives you a huge amount of sustained healing to keep your team nice and topped off. The Alchemy trait line is here to further improve our engineered kits, which we use a lot of, and make our elixirs more useful. Hidden Flask will cause you to drink an elixir when you dip below 75% health, which in turn grants you might, fury, resolution, and swiftness. Extra boons are always nice. Health Insurance will increase your incoming healing effectiveness by 10% and increase your healing to others by 20% when you're using a med kit. This trait makes it very difficult to justify bringing other heal skills on this build just because of how good it makes your med kit. Transmute will cause you to drink an elixir when you get 3 conditions on you, which will then convert these conditions into boons. An immensely useful trait when you're on condition heavy fights like Sloss's Ore. Backpack Regenerator will simply cause you to regenerate health whenever you're using an engineering kit. Given this build typically uses 3 kits, you'll be getting a lot of mileage out of this trait. One of your jobs as a healer is to not die. If you go down, who is going to be helping the rest of your team? Compounding chemicals will heal you when you grant yourself a boon. It also gives you some extra concentration to make your boons last longer. Again, anything that helps keep you alive is a great thing. HGH will cause your elixirs to last longer, have a reduced recharge, and grant might. You use quite a few elixirs in this build, so you have a lot of room to take advantage of this. In the upcoming balance patch, the cooldown reduction part of this trait will be applied to you automatically, so a good part of this trait will just be made baseline. The Mechanist trait line is obviously required to make the entire build function. This grants you a new AI-powered mech to aid you in combat, and replaces your base engineer toolbelt skills with mech command skills. Mechanical Genius causes your mech to inherit a percentage of your traits. These bonus stats are lowered if your mech is too far away from you. Just keep your mech close and everything's hunky-dory. In the next balance patch, this will instead increase the cooldown of your mech command skills if your mech is too far away. Again, just always try and keep your mech close. High impact drivers will cause your mech to grant might to nearby allies whenever it attacks. You'll also get access to the Explosive Knuckle mech command skill, a very nice trait for keeping up permanent might on your team. Mech Fighter will cause your mech to use Rocket Punch whenever you use skill 3 on your equipped weapon. This is some nice extra damage and CC for free. It also causes your mech to inherit more of your toughness and vitality. Channeling Conduits will cause you and your mech to provide alacrity to allies whenever you apply barrier. This makes the entire build function, given just how frequently you'll be applying barrier to your team. Your mech will also gain more of your concentration and healing power. It also unlocks the mech command skill Crisis Zone. Exigency protocols will make it so that when your mech is struck below half health, it will take 50% less damage for 5 seconds and give itself regen to help keep it alive. It also makes any regeneration you apply 20% stronger, which is super nice. Barrier Engine will cause your mech to automatically grant a small amount of barrier to your team every 3 seconds while you're in combat. This means that every 3 seconds, you'll also apply Alacrity to your team for free. Once again, you also get access to the mech command skill, Barrier Burst. Gearing on Heal Mechanist really depends on if you want to tank or not. Tanking in raids is most often based on who has the highest toughness. If you're tanking, you'll want to crank your toughness to your desired level so that you have the highest toughness in your party. If you're not sure what level to go for, or are pugging raids with random players, make your toughness as high as possible. If you're not tanking, you'll want as little toughness as possible. In either case, you'll run Superior Rune of the Monk for the extra healing power, boon duration, and extra healing effectiveness. If you're not tanking, run full Harrier's gear. This will give you the maximum amount of healing and boon duration possible, while keeping your toughness at a minimum. If you're tanking, there are quite a few gear choices that will work. Full Givers in every slot will give you as much boon duration and toughness as possible. Full Minstrels will give you the most healing power and overall survivability at the cost of some boon duration. When I run Heal Mechanist, I like to run Givers, weapons and trinkets as well as Minstrel's armor. This keeps the gearing relatively simple while still giving you over 90% boon duration, which ensures you'll have no problem keeping up boons. You'll also end up with over 2,300 toughness, so you'll be incredibly survivable. A full set of Minstrel's gear only gave around 78% boon duration, which I think is a bit low for a defensive support build such as this. Generally, for full heal and boon support classes like Heal Mech, it's good to get your boon duration as close to 100% as possible, to maximize uptime on all your boons. For sigils, we have some choices. First, always take Sigil of Transference for the extra 10% healing modifier. For our other rune, there are some extra choices. Sigil of Paralyzation will give you an extra 30% stun duration, which really helps your breakbar damage. Sigil of Water will heal allies whenever you land a critical hit. Sigil of Renewal will heal allies whenever you weapon swap, which also applies when you swap out of kits. All of these are good options. I personally play with Paralyzation Sigil, for the extra CC. One thing to note about Sigil of Concentration, which is used in a lot of healing builds, is that the 10% extra boon duration is not passed to your mech, which provides a chunk of your boons. So I've not listed it here as you get more value from some of the other sigils. For our consumables, take bowl of fruit salad with mint garnish and bountiful maintenance oil for the extra outgoing healing, healing power, and concentration. Unlike other DPS or offensive support builds, as a healer, you don't have a strict rotation to follow. Most of the time, you're going to be playing reactively, keeping an eye on your team's health and healing them if they take spikes of damage. You'll also want to keep an eye on a boss's animations to see when large spikes of damage will be coming in, so you can be ready to heal at a moment's notice. You'll also generally want to use your various elixir skills off cooldown because they grant you might due to the trait HGH. You can then save your burst healing for situations where you need to top up your team's health or cleanse conditions. This does lead to a very flexible rotation, and you do have enough boon duration so that you can delay your skills a little bit without your key boons running out. However, you can start fights with a well-defined opener to get as many boons as possible on your team and then play a bit more reactively from there. Start off with Crisis Zone and Barrier Burst for a huge amount of alacrity. Use Mace 2 for Vigor and Regeneration. Use both Shield 4 and 5 for Protection. Swap to Elixir Gun and then use 5, then 4 for Might. Make sure to weapon swap to cancel the backwards leap on Elixir Gun 4. Then use Mortar Kit 5. From here, you'll want to cycle between your kits and use elixirs off cooldown as soon as possible to upkeep might. Outside of going into your kits, you can basically sit on Mace Shield and auto attack as well as use Mace 2 and your shield skills off cooldown for boons. For some quick notes on other skills. If you don't need the Aegis or stability on Crisis Zone to block attacks, just use it off cooldown for alacrity. You can use Barrier Burst off cooldown. You can either activate Barrier Signet off cooldown for the extra barrier and alacrity, or save it for projectile block or barrier to soak up attacks. You'll need to use your judgment on different fights though. You also want to use Medkit 5 off cooldown for the long duration boons it applies. I like to use Medkit 3 and then 5 whenever possible, so you can use the Blast Finisher from Medkit 5 in the Water Field from Medkit 3 for some extra healing. Outside that, just dip into your Medkit whenever you need some extra burst healing. Your rotation of using your various elixir skills off cooldown, applying regeneration and barrier, will give you a huge amount of sustained healing as well. Now, go forth my friends, and provide your team with all the love and support they could ever need. Here on On Mechanist, you have one of the most complete packages in a build. You have outstanding sustained healing, the ability to burst heal and Condi cleanse when needed, obscene boon coverage, the ability to provide Aegis and stability to your team, as well as incredible CC and utility. There is a reason that On Mechanist has been the backbone of so many groups since it was released with End of Dragons last year. It simply does everything very, very well indeed. Thank you all so much for watching. This build guide was an absolute treat to make, and don't you worry, some of our builds will need to be updated after the next patch, looking at you Herald, but rest assured these will all be updated. In the meantime, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Cheers!